All right, everybody. This episode of Angles is brought to you, as always, by Richmond Bona Personal Injury Attorneys. We can't do without them, so I got to give them the plug. And this week, super pumped to have been able to sit down and have a conversation with former U.S. Congressman Brian Higgins, current president and CEO of Shea's. I mean, fascinating, brilliant guy who's born and raised South Buffalo. Really, his vision all centers on making Buffalo a better place. We talked about so much. I mean, really, truly a fascinating conversation. When he left, we were all looking at each other saying this might have been one of the best, if not the best. He was amazing. So we appreciated his time. I think you're going to love the conversation. And as always, if you like these conversations and you want more of them, do us a favor, like, subscribe, follow us on social, on YouTube, on anywhere you get your podcasts. It helps us keep these people coming in and having these great conversations. Enjoy. Well, yeah, you can talk hockey. I mean, you're a Buffalo guy born and raised, so...
Yeah, I grew up with the Buffalo Sabres. Change Buffalo.
Do you have a period in time with the Sabres that resonates most with you?
Yeah, the first 4 years.
Yeah.
When they got Perreault, Martin, and Gare.
What stands out about that time? Is it the odd, like
It took over
newness?
Buffalo.
Yeah.
I used to play hockey. The only covered rink was the old barn up in Fort Erie. So
wow.
prime time, ice time would be 4 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
Then the Sabres got the franchise, I believe it was 70-71, Buffalo and Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
And we got Perreault, who was just, very, very exciting hockey player, gifted. And street hockey just exploded.
That's awesome.
I played for Bishop Time in high school. I was in freshman year in 74, okay? Right around that period of time. They had 4 teams, and it was a relatively small school. They had a varsity, a JV, and 2 freshman teams.
Wow.
This is how popular hockey became. And then you saw the construction of all of the covered rinks, leisure rinks, holiday twin rinks. They all came about the same time because the interest in youth hockey just exploded.
That's super interesting. I'll be honest, this sounds almost foolish, but I've never even really, because of my age, thought about Buffalo without the Sabres.
Yeah.
And I just I guess in my brain, I just always pictured it as there's always been a hockey town.
Well, Patrick Kane's father and I grew up together playing hockey.
Okay.
We grew up at the Casanova ice rink. Mm-hmm. I was a rink guard, and it was an open rink. So you would be lucky to have ice December, January, into February.
Right.
After that, it was done. And then even within that period of time, there were warm spells because it was an open rink.
Yeah.
Young Patrick, who played for Chicago and now Detroit, wears number 88 because he was born in 88.
Yeah.
They covered the rink at Cas in 86, which gave the next generation ice 12 months out of the year every day.
Wow, that's a huge game changer for those kids.
So Patrick was on the ice 2-3 times a day as a little guy, and makes all the difference in the world.
Good thing they covered that ice.
Yeah.
Covered it
Or
up.
if they covered it earlier.
Yeah.
In a different place.
Yeah, exactly. That's wild. So thanks for being here. We had a chance to get going right away. We were talking hockey, so we had to just keep going. But how are things going at Shea's? I mean, it's amazing, 100-year anniversary.
Yeah, it is. It's Shea's is a existential cultural institution in Buffalo and Western New York. It's a driver of the economy of downtown Buffalo. The tavern owners and the restaurant owners, they call it the Shea's effect. When Shea's is alive, everybody's alive.
Yeah.
So our job is to increase activation, so as to increase pedestrian density in downtown Buffalo that can support all of those bars and restaurants in and around the theater district.
Yeah.
So it's going great. Shea's is the largest theater by seating capacity in New York State. In other words, there's 41 Broadway venues. The average seating capacity is 1,200. At Shea's, it's 3,019.
Oh, wow.
So if you're a Broadway producer and you're looking out over the venue landscape, you're coming to Shea's.
For sure, yeah.
And Shea's, I can't tell you exactly what it is, but Shea's patron loyalty is extraordinary. Industry-wide, season ticket subscriptions are down by about 30 to 40%. And Broadway, they still haven't recovered from the pandemic. They're still down about 6%. At Shea's, we've increased by 30%. It's just a very loyal audience. So what we're doing is we're taking on a very ambitious rebuilding program. We just did $5 million of reconstruction down at Shea 710. Shea's Performing Arts Center is 3 venues. So it's 710, which used to be the Studio Arena Theater. We've had that for 14 years. The Shea Smith Theater, which is a very small, what they would refer to as a black box theater. And then the main historic theater, which is 3,019 seats. So we completed that in September of last year, 710, $5 million reconstruction. And we're now undertaking a $34.5 million, 25,000 square foot addition. We're not adding seats. It's all about the patron experience. We started from a very simple, straightforward premise. That is, how do we get our patrons into the space and throughout the space in the safest, most efficient, and enjoyable way. So we'll more than double the size of the lobbies. We'll put in 63 new restroom fixtures, very popular.
Yeah.
And 3 high-speed, large-capacity elevators.
Wow. So
it's last year, 362,000 people came through the doors of Shea's 3 venues.
So when you left Congress in 2024, and we'll definitely talk about that a little bit, but you step into this role. I read that there was over 100 applicants for the president and CEO position. Did you have this in mind? Is this like kind of what you pitched them as you came in, or did you figure this out after you got in there?
I was actually recruited to become a candidate in the search process for the university presidency at Buffalo
State. Yeah.
And I was quietly going through that process, just so as not to, categorically reject it. And it turned out the Shea's search process, they both get search firms that are national in scope, and they just kind of proceed. The Shea's search process was running almost concurrent to the day that the Buffalo State University search process was going. In other words, I had a meeting with the search committee at Buffalo State at 8:30 one Friday morning. At noon, I had one with Shea's.
Wow.
And I had other opportunities. I was lucky. I had options. And that's not always the case. I could have stayed in Washington, that was the last thing I was going to do. So as I said, I was lucky. So it was a competitive process. I kind of got recruited to it, but you've got to withstand the search process. They're looking for a certain candidate, and I think I'm happy to have been offered the position and be able to make that transition.
Yeah, how has the transition been? I mean, I got to imagine. I mean, look, you're obviously a leader. You're in Congress for so long, and I'm sure I'm interested to hear what are the things that and I'm sure you didn't know it at the time, but prepared you for this role while you were in Congress, because it's maybe on paper not the most. You kind of just picture okay, you're the president CEO of Shea's. Well, you used to be the president CEO of this place or that place. So I'm just kind of curious about the transition.
Yeah, I'm a non-conventional candidate without question for both positions.
Yeah.
Although I taught at the university I taught in the history and economics departments. I taught Anglo-Irish history and I taught macroeconomics for about 7 years. But it's, life is about intention and obstacle, and it's about vision and execution, regardless of what you're doing, whether you're building a waterfront or building a theater district in downtown Buffalo. It's about having a vision and doing the hard work necessary to make that vision real. And I thought that the vision thing was a more common attribute. It's not. A lot of people they're good people. They have other great qualities.
Yeah.
But some people can't see beyond what's immediately in front of them. And really, life is about vision. How do you work to make something better than it is? It's true with an individual. It's true with a neighborhood. It's true with a city. And, Buffalo, when I taught, they let me write and teach a course at Buffalo State called The Economic History of Buffalo and Western New York. And in my class, we would chronicle the rise and decline of Buffalo's economy dating back to the 1901 Pan American Exposition. Buffalo was the 8th largest economy in the entire nation. We had more millionaires per capita than any other city in the country. All the great architects, Daniel Burnham, Richard Upjohn, Louis Sullivan, Henry Hobson Richardson, Frank Lloyd Wright, None of them were from Buffalo.
Yeah.
They came to Buffalo because Buffalo had a confidence and a wealth that exuded to these artists that you come to Buffalo, you can get your vision turned into something real.
Mm-hmm.
And we lost a lot of that because we lost a lot of the manufacturing that was a big part of the economy in the early through the mid 20th century. And then, world transportation changed, world economies changed, more people could plug in and play,
Mm-hmm.
and that created a competition that was hard for Buffalo to keep up with. And what also happened along those years is it's a huge, huge issue. I mean, the economy is 2/3 consumer confidence. It's about how you and I feel about our economic future. If we're confident, we move. When we're not, we don't.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's also true with communities. And I remember an old hockey analogy. The Sabres lost a controversial game. I think it was against Dallas Stars.
Oh, yeah, I was
Red
there.
Hall. Were you?
Oh, yeah, terrible.
Well, people drove around Buffalo for 10 years with a bumper sticker that said no goal.
Yeah.
And wide right and, the Peace Bridge. Whatever it is, you became preoccupied with despair. Like Buffalo's fate was determined by external forces over which you had no control. And that's what happens when people lose confidence in themselves and other people. But it also is true with communities and neighborhoods. So a lot of what I try to do in Congress, I went after the New York Power Authority. We won a $300 million settlement, which is still financing the redevelopment of Buffalo's waterfront. We did that. I was a freshman in the minority, and I was very aggressive, stepped on some toes, alienated some allies, but I didn't have the luxury of another year because the 50-year license that the New York Power Authority had to own and operate the Niagara Power Project was expiring, and they were going to get a new 50-year license. So I had to make my arguments aggressively and effectively. And we should have received $1 billion settlement. But, $300 million was significant. But this is what happens. People just, in this community, not as much anymore, they just accept that, the preoccupation is I'm going to get screwed.
Right, yeah.
And therefore you accept it without fighting it.
Yeah.
And what I used to say to people, if this economy in Western New York continues to decline, if we continue to lose population and our young people disproportionately, then we have nobody to blame but ourselves.
Right.
Stand up for yourself.
How do you break that? Because that's it's so true. It's you're right. I'm going to get screwed. It could be with sports, could be with anything. This isn't going to work out. We know it. We're never on the right side of things. Like whether it's with an individual or community, do they have to feel some level of success? Like do the Sabres or the Bills have to win something to break that, or are there other ways to do that?
Well, sports is part of it. It's people identify very closely with sporting teams in Buffalo, and Buffalo has been a very loyal fan base for both of those teams.
Yeah.
I just think it's having a vision about where we can be as a community and collectively working toward that. And, I don't think that there's, people that live in a neighborhood want to be protected, connected, and respected. Mm-hmm. And I think that the political folk have gotten too far away from community. It's the central social unit of people's lives. It's not about Wall Street. It's not about K Street. It's not even about Main Street. It's about the neighborhood streets where real people live and struggle every day. And still, at the end of the day, they find a reason to believe. And if you are connected to them, they put their faith in you and you try to deliver on their behalf. And it's a collective. There's not one person that changes anything. It's possibly one person that can inspire a new group of people. Culture changes when a group of people find a better way to live and everybody else copies it. I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, when I hear that, I think about, whether it's, you're in Congress or you're leading people at Shea's. I mean, the people you're leading have to trust you. Yeah. They have to trust that you have their best interests in mind, that, they can be vulnerable with you, that, and that, I guess, again, you're not going to screw them over at the end. Like, how do you earn that trust, whether it's when you're in Congress with your constituents, or as you step into a new role as a leader in an organization that's been around a long time?
It's about managing people and doing it respectfully, and having a vision, outlining that vision for them. I was always very fortunate. There's 435 members of Congress. I was always in the top 5 of congressional staffs that were viewed as the best. The average tenure of a congressional staffer was 3 years. In my office, it was 11 years.
Wow.
We just kept people together because we had very little turnover. Everybody felt part of the larger objective, the larger vision, and everybody worked toward it. Everybody kicked in to do whatever they could do to help out, regardless of what their job title was. I got that kind of loyalty, I think, by mistake. I didn't realize it at the time, but it's just the way I was brought up. You're respectful with people. You treat everybody as equals, so it worked out. It worked out. The other thing is, too many. I didn't go to Congress to change the world. I went to change Buffalo, and we did in a lot of very, very substantial ways. But people have lost that direction. They've lost that vision. Social media, they get on the floor, they act up. It's all performative.
Yeah.
They get in the elevator and see how many hits they got.
Yeah.
That's what's going on. There's 7 articles of the Constitution. James Madison deliberately included as the first article the legislative branch. And the most important of the legislative branch was the House of Representatives. Why? Because it's closest to the people. Everybody in Congress represents the same number of people, about 900,000 people. But you're supposed to remain close to your people,
right,
not to move away from the community
that
elected you to move to Washington and become immersed in that culture.
Yeah.
There's just a disconnect. And it's not that people have a problem with democracy. People have a problem with the government that this democracy created. Government has a customer service problem, whether it's the federal debt and deficit, whether it's the mess that is Social Security, the student loan program. Everybody gets knocked around when they try to interface with the federal bureaucracy. No wonder there's a problem. Mm-hmm. So you got to get better at what it is you do, because people depend on you, and just the people get jerked around and bamboozled, and it's amazing that we still have a government because of how out of touch it is with the very people it's there to serve.
Right. You use the word vision a lot. Do you think you can teach vision, or is that something that maybe, like, say, maybe looking at your own self, like you just always had it and it just came together some way? Or can you teach people to have their own vision, to look past, like you said, the things right in front of them?
I don't know. That's a very, very good question. Here's what I do know. I studied an early 20th century Irish nationalist leader by the name of Michael Collins. Michael Collins was young, handsome, charismatic, and he drove Great Britain out of Ireland in the early part of the 20th century. I defended him as a charismatic under the German sociologist Max Weber's 3 forms of leadership. One is legal, the other is traditional, church, that kind of thing. And the most unique is charismatic. And charismatic is, in Latin, it's a gift from God. Mm-hmm. And very few people have it. But I think the main tenet of charisma is being so keen about your vision for a place that you are just emotionally wrapped up in it. And then people that you're communicating with become emotionally wrapped up in it as well. Yeah. So I think I learned, the power of it. So from that standpoint, I just, again, when you lay out what you want something to become, we're always in the process of becoming.
Yeah.
That's what life's about. And I just assume that more people possess that, I would call it a skill, I guess, but not really. The people that I ran with in elected office. I mean, some people, they just have a blank stare in their face when you tell them that you want to make this shithole, something that we can be proud of, whether it's a waterfront stretch of land or it's a park or whatever else. So I just think it's a very important element in public life. But if you don't have it, where do you go? Where are you spending your time? And that's where I get concerned.
Yeah, and it's definitely a skill that's built up. But I think I think what you're saying too is like you have to have that passion like underlying it.
Yeah.
'Cause otherwise, maybe you could get away with it for a while, then it's gonna wear off.
Yes.
You got to really want it. It's got to
Yeah.
be something that means a lot to you, and then it becomes infectious.
Yes.
People want to be around that.
Yeah.
Probably because there's not a lot of that going on.
It's well said. You're right. You're absolutely right. I remember I was a kid. My dad was on the city council. And at that time, I was 10. And they were proposing to deinstitutionalize the developmentally disabled. So they were all in these institutions, and they created these community residences. That they have rights. They are deserving to grow up in a neighborhood like everybody else, and that's what we're going to do. But they were very controversial because they were going in neighborhoods, and of course, people would get emotionally all whipped up.
Yeah.
Safety issues, public safety issues, housing values, all this other stuff. Long story short, my dad's on the city council. They have to go before the city council to get an approval. It required a variance because it was going to be a group home.
Right.
On Buffalo Street in South Buffalo. So I'm home one night. We were always taught to, just be polite to people regardless of how hostile they may become. They would call your house. That's just what people did, and they'd complain about stuff. So one guy calls one night. He says, "You tell your father that if he continues to pursue this group home, we're going to burn down your house."
Wow.
So I'm obviously waiting for my father to get home. I got to deliver this message directly. So he comes home. He's he's a wonderful man, and very handsome, and everybody looked up to him. Took my hand, and he said, "Nobody's going to burn down our house." He said, "My job as an elected official is to help people understand what they don't understand, and not to do it in an arrogant way, but a respectful way."
Right.
So this thing got very, very heated. The day of the vote in the city council, probably about 6 weeks later, 400 people in the chamber, all of whom were opposed to this thing. 13 members of the council, they vote in alphabetical order. Each member that preceded my dad deferred to my father. So he got up. This made this very, they didn't ask to be born this way. We have an obligation to do better as a society for them. The item passed 13-0.
Wow.
That's the day I fell in love with politics. I mean, you can change things. And I think, most people are inherently good, but I think they're also inherently weak. And they don't commit themselves to a higher purpose. Life's hard enough, so people just try to get through the day. And those are the kinds of lessons very early on that change you. That was an enunciation moment for me. I love politics. I pursued politics because of that.
Yeah.
So, those are the kinds of things that you don't anticipate, but they're born out of adversity because, we don't learn from our wins. We learn from our losses.
For sure.
And life is about rupture and repair.
So how old were you when that vote happened?
10.
So you're 10 years old and you're like, okay, however you say it in your head at that time, like I want to get into politics or I want to fight for people, whatever it is. But your dad, obviously, without him, maybe you're not here, right? Without that occurring, maybe you are. But how do you then set out on your path? Like I'm guessing you didn't the first time you thought, hey, I want to get in this, I'm going to become a U.S. Congressman and blah blah blah. Like, but I think there's got to be some good lessons, I'm sure, in there, like for people who like, hey, maybe you've had an experience like this or you haven't, but there is something you're passionate about. How do you just start going just one foot in front of the other and just figure it out as you go?
Well, you know what? Yeah, in a way, and I kind of resisted it.
Why is that?
I don't know. I was recruited by a pharmaceutical company called Boehringer Ingelheim, and they wanted me to move to Binghamton or something. And in the meantime, there was a sheriff, Tom Higgins, no relation to me. I had some time. I was working on campaigns, so I helped him. He won, was overly generous in giving me more credit than I deserved for his victory. He won. But then there was a state assemblyman who the next year was going to face a tough reelection because of the credit Tom Higgins gave me and the reputation that, was established. He had asked me if I'd come and run his campaign. Now, this is right in the middle of negotiating with this pharmaceutical company.
Wow.
And it turns out that the guy that recruited me for Beringer Ingelheim went to Houston, Texas to take a position with Squibb. And the recruitment process had to start over.
Oh, wow.
And because it was going to be a new person.
Yeah.
Which is understandable.
Yeah.
So then the assemblyman was successful in his election that I was his campaign manager, and he had offered me a government job. And I had a degree in political science and a master's in history and economics, and so. And then I was in the city council. I was very young. I was about 25 years old at Buffalo City Council. Mm-hmm. 4 years later, I ran countywide and I lost an election. Everybody thought I was going to win.
Wow.
Polling had me up and everything else, and so I lost. And then I went to Harvard University and pursued a master's degree at their School of Public Policy and Administration. And it turned out that the president of M&T Bank at the time was Bob Wilmers, and he was a very big supporter of mine. I think he saw me as young, up and coming, that kind of thing. And I was, as I said, I was on the city council. I was very young. And he said, I see that you got accepted to Harvard. I said, yeah, but I can't go. I had 2 kids at the time, the 2 and 3. I can't just I have to work, So he said, if I could help you, would you reconsider? I said, well, of course, I'll listen to it.
Yeah.
So he called the next day. He said, I just established the Western New York Harvard Graduate Fellowship. If you want it, it's yours.
Wow.
I said, I'll take it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So at the time, I was there in 95 and 96. That was probably $80,000, tuition, room and board, books, and all that stuff.
Wow.
It's a pretty big gift.
That's huge.
Yeah. So, just, I guess my point is 6 months earlier, I'd lost an election, was devastated. I mean, you can't help but, view that as a personal rejection.
Right.
You can't. So, you're pretty down. And then next thing I'm off to a greatest adventure in my whole life and earned a graduate degree from Harvard.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you're a little boy from South Buffalo. You never probably imagine you're going to go to Harvard.
Right.
That's pretty
And the
wild.
son of bricklayers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Same here. Yeah, we were talking about that before.
Do you know that there's 520,000 brick in the Shea's Performing Arts Center, the historic theater?
How do you guys know that number? That's amazing.
My grandfather worked on the project.
Come on.
I swear to God. He
Wow.
was from County Mayo. If you look at all these buildings, they were all built with brick.
Yeah.
And every one of these brick were laid by hand.
Yeah.
So what happened was Buffalo was growing very significantly in the earlier part of the 20th century. Buildings like Shea's, but all these warehouses and office buildings, they all occurred 1895 through 1820, that period. Mm-hmm. So there weren't enough bricklayers, so they would recruit aggressively from Ireland. Wow. And they would bring bricklayers here. And Rick Williamson, who's head of the bricklayers now, so I called him one day. I said, could my grandfather have worked in this building? He said, absolutely. He was 30 years old, because at that time there was so much work. You weren't working on one project to completion. You were moving around to a bunch of them. He said, absolutely, he had to work on that project.
Even now, there's a huge shortage of bricklayers. It's crazy. It's a very tough job, to say the least.
Yeah.
And it's highly skilled, too.
Winston Churchill was an amateur bricklayer.
I did not know that.
And Mick Jagger's mother said that, why don't you go into something, more useful than music? She wanted him to be a bricklayer. Wow.
My dad wouldn't let me. I tried. And he's like, no. He's like, I know who you are. You're not going to survive doing this. So again, we're talking a lot about vision. I'm curious, I would love to know what your vision for Buffalo is. And I guess and you can talk about how Shea's is going to play a big part in that, but what is the ultimate vision for Buffalo if we can execute on it collectively?
Yeah, I mean, before the pandemic, and I think people kind of glossed over this, but it was very, very substantial. The Economist magazine, the New York Times, the Boston Globe, the Toronto Sun, People magazine, Travel and Leisure, Architectural Digest, all did feature stories extolling the virtues of Buffalo. For the first time in 50 years, the population of Buffalo increased and decreased. For the first time in 50 years, the population of young Buffalo was increasing. The tech investment here, when we had Bethlehem Steel and Republic Steel, that is disproportionately where people went to work.
Yeah, for sure.
And there wasn't a lot of cultivation of a diversified economy. And people like Renee Jones and from M&T Bank had the vision to create the tech hub.
Yep.
And that's, there's not a lot of businesses that are not tech related in there. There are some, but the vast majority are tech related. So I think that's helped a lot and forms a basis from which to grow as a city. The Olmsted Park system, people don't realize how unique that is. When Frederick Law Olmsted came to Buffalo, they had just finished Central Park. Central Park is 850 acres. Mm-hmm. The entirety of the Olmsted Park system is 850 acres.
Wow.
But it's 6 parks,
yeah.
It's 7 parkways and 7 landscape traffic circles. Mm-hmm. But the whole idea, Frederick Olmsted was a public health worker in the Civil War. And he believed strongly in parks because he believed in the healing power of parks. So if you had access to an abundance of fresh air and sunshine, you were going to be healthier.
Yeah.
And that's why he invented in Buffalo the parkway system. So regardless of where you lived, you had access to a park. Mm-hmm. And then, unfortunately, Humboldt Parkway was destroyed, which was the grandest. And we look at the Wikipedia page, and it talks about that, and it lists the parkways of the Olmsted Park system in Buffalo. And next to Olmsted, it says lost. I would take that out, and I would say it was stolen. And, they're still debating it. They're still trying to recreate. Yeah. But so much is lost in that period of time. Buffalo just needs to be more innovative. It needs to be more visionary and bold about the kinds of life quality issues that people want. There was a mayor in Detroit, Michigan, Mike Duggan, his name is. New York Times did a piece on him, two feature stories in the last year about how popular he is. And he's not like a charismatic guy. He's kind of an overweight, middle-aged Irish guy, But it was his focus on quality of life issues. It's parks, it's policing, it's neighborhoods. Don't try to complicate it. And I think people will see that, creation of unique places. Elmwood Village was in total disrepair 30 years ago. And now it's one of the best living spaces in America, consistently voted as. But that was a vision, and that was execution of a vision. And I think it's about getting people behind what it is you want to do for them to make the collective a better place.
Yeah, execution. Like there's 2 parts to this, right? Like you keep saying, it makes a lot. It's spot on. You have to have the vision, then you have to be willing to execute on it. And execution usually is really hard, and often that's, even if you have the vision, that's where people can fail, right? You're going to do some things that aren't popular. You're going to probably alienate some people, just kind of how it goes. What's your approach to, I guess, execution in general? And can you talk now more about, we talked about at the beginning, but about how Shea's is going to play a role in that? Because I've read a lot about, how Shea's can bring in people from Ontario, and there's a lot more that we can do there. So I'm just kind of curious about how you approach execution, and then how Shea's is going to be wrapped into this.
You get the public behind you. There was a time where the Buffalo News editorial page was very influential. It's not as much anymore. Mm-hmm. The paper is very thin. And that's a shame. Yeah. And that's the power of local media. When I took on the Power Authority, I remember my dad called me one time. He said, "Look, Brian, I'm very concerned. You are way out there on this issue. If it doesn't work out," I said, "Dad, I think people appreciate the effort. Mm-hmm. They know that we live in an abundance of fresh water. Why is it that everybody makes an economic claim to Buffalo's cheap hydroelectricity? We don't make an economic claim to Florida sunshine. Everybody comes back from Florida and they say, nobody pays taxes. It's great. Everything's clean. Everything's new. That's because they take advantage of their natural resources, an abundance of sunshine and a moderate, mild climate. And we don't make a claim to that. It's a lake in Buffalo that feeds a river whose water is diverted that produces the cleanest, cheapest electricity in New York State. And our power goes to New York City into 7 states outside of New York. And if you take a finite resource and you expand the canvas too large, it loses its impactfulness.
For sure.
So I had lost a lot of Democratic colleagues. They weren't with me. But I didn't have the luxury of time, so I had to win this in a very, very short period of time. But the public was with me. And the Buffalo News media made sure of that. That's activist journalism. I mean, you can change a community if, the columnists are with you, if the radio stations are with you, if the television stations are with you, because they give you the opportunity to define the issue before somebody that opposes you tries to define it.
Sure. And you make the people, whether it's your constituents or even people you're leading in, at a business or a non-for-profit, whatever it is, like make them understand like this is what it means for you. Right?
Yes.
And because people want to know that. Even people who I feel, hey, they really are bought in on the vision or the mission and they share your values, but they're people and they want to know, like, how does this affect me?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And that was, selfishly, it worked for me. My first election, I was elected with like less than 1% of the vote. And then I never had a problem after that. And I didn't realize it at the time, but people really rewarded you in a bipartisan way. I'm a Democrat, but I can't tell you how many times I've been at the airport where somebody says, I just want to let you know I'm a Republican. I've never voted for a Democrat other than you. And it happened a lot. I just really never had, and I realized the power of connecting with people that regardless of your political affiliation, the one thing is we got screwed by higher forces that took away this great resource that brought people to Buffalo in the first place. Mm-hmm. The Pan American Exposition was held in Buffalo because we were going to demonstrate how hydroelectricity could change the world. Mm-hmm. That's why it was held in Buffalo. And as I said, shortly thereafter, all these extraordinary, mostly from Chicago, these architects came to Buffalo because they couldn't get their works commissioned anywhere else.
Right.
So there was the combination of wealth and confidence.
Where do you think we are now? Because, I think, obviously since the pandemic, it seems like I'll give you an example, like anecdotally even, like, I moved here from New York City, born and raised in Rochester originally, but moved here from New York in 2015 because I loved what was going on here. I love Buffalo. I'm so happy to be here now, being here now since 2015. But it seems like now every time you open up the newspaper, there's some positive stuff, but then it's like, oh, these restaurants closed downtown and this developer is taking his money and getting out of here now. Like, where do you think we are right now, and how do we get to where we need to go?
Yeah, there's a tendency in neuroscience and human psychology. The most powerful of human emotions is the longing and quest for home. Everybody has it. People have it, they don't even know they have it. That's very, very important. And I think if you reduce it to that irreducible essence and you say our plan here is to make this a different place so that both you and this is not about future generations. It is, but it's also about you. Yeah. And just, have the wherewithal to marshal those resources that are necessary to give people tangible evidence that there is a future here. I think, people are going to be negative, and I still think that there's that ghost of we as a city believe that our fate is determined by external forces over which we have no control. Yeah. And there's a psychological term called learned helplessness. Yep. And when people, they keep trying, nothing changes, they stop trying, and then eventually a depression falls over them. It's true with individuals, but it's also true with communities. And if you look at the history of the nation, communities rise and fall. And I think finding a sustainable way one of the things I noticed when I came back from Washington, because I was gone, Monday through Friday typically, and I'd be back on the weekends, and you try to maximize your exposure, but you're really not immersed as you need to be in a community to understand it.
Yeah.
But a lot of belly aching about lack of pedestrian density in downtown Buffalo because of the pandemic and remote work.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. But, belly aching doesn't do you any good unless you take it to the next level of activism.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's just sometimes that defeatist mentality. But, trying to take people over the horizon about a vision, and we're applying that to a large degree at Shea's. As I said, we're doing a 25,000 square foot addition. We've raised about nearly $30 million for it already. But it's all about drawing people into downtown Buffalo for a different experience.
Right.
We're using digital signage. There are going to be 8 of them, and it's like Times Square at a smaller scale.
That's cool.
But the idea is theater is about the light and the night.
Yeah.
And you've got to create a place that people want to be in. And I should have brought some of the stuff, but we have, like the Wicked theme is up on the building, and there's this huge high-resolution digital screen that advertises the show. That in of itself will become an attraction for let's go down and see the sign.
Yeah.
And it's that cool. It's that,
Yeah.
and we made sure we didn't compromise in quality. I want the highest resolution technology that's available. Period. The end. Some of the other things we're doing, there's a public alleyway next to the Alleyway Theater between Shea's and Alleyway Theater, and it connects Pearl Street with Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
And you come out and you're right at Shea's. So it's an important point through which to get to Shea's. Well, the alley's sketchy. It smells of urination, and it's dark, and at night you wouldn't use it.
Yeah.
Now, why can't you use that? Well, here's what we're doing. We have a partnership with Shea's, AKG, City of Buffalo, Alleyway Theater, and Visit Buffalo. Used to be Visit Buffalo Niagara. We're doing a lit art installation.
That's awesome.
Throughout the entire alleyway.
Yeah.
So it's aesthetically enhanced, but it's also more welcoming. Same is across the street. They're connecting Washington Street with Main Street. There's a Michael Bennett Way. He was a producer from Buffalo, Broadway producer. And it's kind of sketchy. A little narrow, a little dark. We're going to do murals. We're going to do creative lighting. So we're taking our vision beyond our venues because you don't like the lack of pedestrian density? We're doing something about it.
Right.
Last year, Shea's at 710, before we did the reconstruction, we had 215 active days. Now we have 365.
That's amazing.
We did a deal with Musical Fair, which was located in Amherst at the Damon University campus, a theater of 136 seats. We have 551 at 710. So the executive director, he's a great operator, Randy Kramer, his name is, of Musical Fair. We had some introductory meetings, but after a while they got caught up into a controversy regarding property taxes in Amherst. They weren't going to build the theater they weren't going to build the park that was going to include the theater. So they needed a home. We signed a 20-year deal with him. So he'll do 75 performances. Every show that we've had since we've opened in September has broken the record previously held by the previous show. I mean, it's quite an extraordinary story. And I said, look, if your board, most of whom are from Amherst, had the confidence to come in downtown Buffalo, everybody should.
Yeah.
And he's killing it. He's killing it. So all this, we're just, we're undertaking physical improvements, but there's a strategy behind it, and I call it congestion mitigation. You go to Shea's, you go see a Broadway show, Book of Mormons, or Suffs, that were 2 great productions, by the way. There's a 20-minute intermission. Hopefully you get to the restroom, but you're not going to have time to go to the concession.
Right, you got to pick.
That hurts our business model because concessions are our third highest revenue source.
Yeah.
So we're creating space that allows you to do both. and to move around with elevators and the like. It's an extraordinary organization that can play a bigger role in the revitalization of downtown Buffalo. And our biggest role is to create the best facilities possible, put the best stuff on stage as possible to fill those seats. And all of those people that come there, the 362,000 that came last year through the doors of the 3 venues. By the way, the Bills at 60,000, they'll only have like 490,000. So we're, inching on them.
Yeah, I love that.
But
I think the Sabres need your help with KeyBank.
Yeah. Well, we have more season ticket subscriptions than the Sabres.
I'm sure.
That's going to change.
Yeah,
because
it's all right,
of
though.
the quality
That's
of the
impressive.
team. And ours is a little different. It's longer, but Shea's it's a not-for-profit. It doesn't belong to anybody. It belongs to the community. And our job is to leave it better than how we found it.
I can tell how passionate you are. Did you know you're going to be this passionate about Shea's before you got the job? Like, where did this come from?
Well, my grandfather helped build it.
Yeah.
My father helped save it in the mid-1970s. They were going to demolish it. He was on the city council.
Oh, yeah.
And
they were going to demolish it?
yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And I saw
What a
Bruce
mistake.
Springsteen start the Darkness on the Edge of Town tour in 1978. He opened at Shea's.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds like you don't miss Congress too much.
No, I don't. I mean, I enjoyed it while I was there.
I'm sure you
I'm a
did, yeah.
student of government as
Yeah.
much as I am a practitioner. And we found a way to be effective over 19 years. Just the amount of money we brought in. We were pretty skilled at it. I was on the Ways and Means Committee, which is the most prestigious committee in the House, and the Budget Committee. But it was time for me. As I said, I was lucky I had options. And you don't want to stand in the way of the next generation. You really, it's important to sustain momentum and giving other people an opportunity. Tim Kennedy's there now, a very
Yeah.
close friend of mine, and I'm just happy that he's had that opportunity.
How would you what are your thoughts, or how would you describe the state of politics now? Because, I was thinking back, you're talking about, being approached and, Republicans saying, hey, I voted for you. And it seems like a rare thing now. It seems such a divided, country. I mean, what are your thoughts on where we are now?
Yeah, it's hard. You can be turned off by the current president and the way he is. But 77 million people voted for him that were willing to overlook that.
Right.
There's something wrong. And the Democrat, this cannot be about the least worst of alternatives. You got to have, you got to instill in people a greater confidence that is more positive and forward-looking. It's not just about kicking the shit out of the opponent. And like political television commercials are awful because they deal with, the glittering generalities.
Yeah.
Taxes, this and that, and you really can't tell a story. And I think authenticity sells. And I think what's gonna happen after the Trump era is that people are gonna look for the exact opposite of what at least his public persona.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the Oval Office in December of 2017. I mentioned I was on the House Ways and Means Committee. They did a tax bill, and to check a box, they invited 3 members of the Ways and Means Committee, Democratic, and I was one of them. But it was his first term, and I've never seen a person have such an impact. I mean, people were like seemingly afraid when he came in the room. I mean, just really comes in like a gangbusters. It was wild. But, when we sat and started dialoguing about the issues relative to, that tax bill, they were going to repatriate funds. I had suggested to him that we use that as an infrastructure investment. Kind of like the idea. Proceeded to knock down his vice president, who said they tried a private-public partnership to completely emasculated him.
Oh, man.
Completely. That's how he operates.
Yeah.
But the stuff January 6th was awful. That was awful.
Yeah.
It was a huge stain in our country. That thing was playing rapid rotation in Russia. So a guy like Putin says, "You really want to be like this country?"
Yeah.
And it's a shame. You look at the United States. We're a $27 trillion economy. We have 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's economy. We're very, very powerful. In Russia, you have their economy is about $2 trillion. So while we bully the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, by the way, an economy that's larger than Russia's, $2.6 trillion versus $2 trillion, and then Putin bullies us. I mean, how can you, in good conscience, how can you support what Russia's doing to Ukraine? It's a sovereign nation. It is smaller. It has won by not losing. Russia has lost by not winning. And I look at the European Union, 27 countries. They have a combined economy of about $24 trillion. Why is it that they can't defeat Russia, which is an economy of $2 trillion? Mm-hmm. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And what we have done relative to our relationship with Canada is it's a gross violation of decency. There was a show at Shea 710 called "Come From Away." It was a story about a city called Gander, Newfoundland, in Canada, where 70 passenger planes had to land because they closed the airspace in the United States after 9/11. And they were treated by the people of Gander, Newfoundland as relatives and friends. That's what they did. There were over 700 people that were stuck there for several weeks and were treated very well. The first time Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization was invoked, it's an attack against one is an attack on all. It's what we signed after World War II to keep world peace. First time it was invoked when the United States was attacked on 9/11, and Canada initiated its invocation. Mm-hmm. Look at right over the border from Fort Erie up through and including the Toronto area. That's 15 million people. 15 million people. That's Southern Ontario. It's a huge part of our economy.
Yeah.
And it's not trivial as to what's happened here. I mean, you really have disrespected and you've screwed up the economies of both nations. We used in the Ways and Means Committee, we did trade agreements. Now, they're never perfect. They're too big, they're too complicated, they're too tedious. But the fact of the matter is, if you make a car today, parts will traverse the border 7 times before it becomes an actual product.
Right.
And not to understand that the world's a lot more complicated today with supply chains and everything else. Rare earths that are necessary for any manufacturing job are controlled by China. Mm-hmm. China has basically pushed President Trump off of tariffs by saying, we're not going to allow you these rare earths. The U.S. auto industry went crazy.
Yeah.
They would go out of business.
Yeah.
So it's I don't want to get into the nonsensical, weaponizing of issues. That's not what I'm about. I'm an American, and I just don't understand how a country's so powerful, and so we've done a lot of stupid things, a lot of wars we should not have been in, but we've also nothing good happens in the world without the United States. And you can't accept that there's perfection. There's good intent, and there's smart decision making. But the nonsense that's going on in the Middle East right now,
yeah,
I mean, that's a powder keg. What's going on in Europe with Russia? I mean, they should have, by the numbers, Putin said that they would finish that war within 3 days.
Yeah.
That was in 2022.
Yeah.
And the way that Zelensky's been treated, that's poor form. That's not a good lesson for students to see. That your White House is going to bully this leader who is courageously defending his country against Russia.
Yeah.
So, I think, all of those things have to result in a better, more responsive government to restore faith in democracy, because it's democracy that gives you this government. And if the government is invalid or is ineffective, how can you expect people to really love democracy? The founders of the nation were selling. They said, if we're going to make a country out of this place, a democracy out of this place and these people, we have to do moral formation, because democracy requires the most out of its citizens than any other form of government. So you have to have people that are empathetic, that are smart, that respect others and the complexities of everyday life, those kinds of things. So schools used to do moral formation. Marv Levy used to say that, his goal as coach of the Buffalo Bills is to make these players better versions of themselves on and off the field. I have a friend that's a headmaster to school in Vermont. He said, what we strive to do is just produce students, young adults, who are acceptable at a dance and invaluable in crisis. It's about values. It's about judgment. It's about all of those things. And right now, the country is just 70%. 70% of Americans 30 years ago used to say, do you believe that government tries to do the right thing most of the time? 70% believe that. Now it's 15%. And with younger generations, it's less than that. We don't trust each other anymore. Mm-hmm. And when you lose faith in the country, like the American dream, do you think your life will be better than your parents?
Right.
We all said yes. Now our kids aren't so sure about that, and that's a crisis in confidence. We're overly politicized. We're under-moralized.
I think that's a great way to put it. So to round things out here and to kind of bring it back local, for I guess the final question, it's a little open-ended, but what excites you most about the next 10 years for Buffalo? Or you can even take it as, where do you hope we are in 10 years here in Western New York?
I hope that there is a better blend of the United States and Canada, economically, culturally, sports teams.
Yeah.
You think about it, 15 million people within 90 minutes of Buffalo. And there's great potential there for something.
For sure.
And I'm not saying that Buffalo needs to be, 1960, we had a population of 580,000. Today it's about 270 something. But, I could see a city of 400,000, 450,000. New viability in the neighborhoods. Got to get back to the neighborhood. As I said, it's the most important unit of social development. And, I have fond memories of growing up in a neighborhood where there was a football game, a wiffle ball game, and a street hockey game within 5 minutes because everybody from the street participated. In the social interaction, I meet my daughter at Casanova Park, and I played baseball at Casanova Park, PAL baseball. We would go over there. We were in walking distance of the park, Casanova Park. There's what's referred to as the bowl. There's 3 diamonds, 2 hardball and 1 softball. I would spend the whole day there as a kid. I'd have a game, but you'd stay and watch games. There was just so much going on. We meet the whole summer. We sit on the bench overlooking the bowl. There's nobody there. Mm-hmm. Across the street is the American Legion post, 721 Casanova and Legion Drive. It's never open. It used to be a bustling place when I was a kid. The Knights of Columbus is hanging on by the skin of their teeth. Another social organization. The Sisters of Mercy. I grew up in the shadows of the convent, the Sisters of Mercy. Look, they were intimidating at times, but they provided us health care, they taught us, and they disciplined us. And now, there's probably 10 nuns that are living in there, and their average age is about 98. So I think losing those kinds of social connections that we all had, and the younger people are today, the less trustful they are of their fellow citizens. And there's all kinds of Gallup and other, polling to confirm that. So I just think it's about, getting back to a common vision of what we want the nation to be, but in doing so, what you want your communities to be. And people should have a role, they should have a say in what that ultimately becomes.
I think it's a great way to leave it. Everyone get out to Shea's. Thank you for being here. This was amazing.
Yeah, thank you, John.
I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Yeah.